Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the sixth Capri series webinar. I cannot believe we've made it to the I in Capri. That is so cool. Time has definitely gone fast, and I know we're going to have a wrap up next month on Capri. So thrilled to have you here for this enriching session. My name is Jeanette Flores. I'm filling in for Dr. Evelyn Shao-Hera. And before we begin, there's just some key guidelines to remember. It's the usual, everyone. Number one, please keep your microphone on mute for a distraction-free environment. Number two, please use the chat function for questions. I'm going to be addressing as many as possible with you, but I'm also going to have Dr. Caesar make sure that she also addresses any that I'm not able to address. And then third, this session is recorded for those of you who cannot join live, and it will be shared at our next PD2Go newsletter. So today it's my pleasure to introduce a colleague I've known for several years now, Dr. Nikki Caesar Small. We've had the privilege of working closely together in multiple institutions and in different capacities, and I can personally attest to her exceptional talent in the classroom, making her the ideal speaker for this topic. Dr. Caesar Small is a seasoned educator. She's got over a decade of leadership experience in higher ed. She's held diverse roles from serving as an associate dean of assessment to business management and marketing faculty. Dr. Caesar Small's academic journey includes a Bachelor of Business Administration from Northwestern State University of Louisiana, a Master's in Business Administration from Northwood University, and a doctorate in higher education with a specialization in leadership and management from Capella University. She has a passion for guiding the next generation and advancing enrollment management, and she's committed to fostering an inclusive and an equitable learning environment. So Dr. Caesar Small, so excited for this webinar. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Flores, for that amazing introduction. I do not deserve all of the credit for that, but I appreciate you. Good morning, my colleagues. It is a pleasure to be able to join you all on this morning. Please feel free to go ahead and grab your cup of coffee, grab some tea, a beverage of choice, because we are going to have some really good conversations today as it relates to inclusive learning. And so, unfortunately, I am going to turn my video off because I cannot see you all. If someone could please do me a favor and just let me know that you are able to see the presentation screen.
Yes, it is very clear, very colorful, and everyone can see it. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome, awesome. Well, again, welcome. Good morning. I see people still coming in, and that's great. So what I want to do is start by talking a little bit about what we're going to do today as it relates to creating an equitable and inclusive learning environment with Capri. And to Dr. Flores's point, can you believe that we are already at the end as we're talking about inclusive? So we're going to really take a deep dive around strategies for meeting diverse needs and perspectives. Okay. All right, and so you all have had an opportunity to really double down with learning in alignment with student interest and expertise. You've all had conversations around learning through creative, case-based problem solving. We have really took a deep dive in learning by doing in a real-world environment. That was a really good session. And then also really relating to understanding the learning as it addresses current and future industry demands. And then last but not least, dun, 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 drum roll please, inclusive, where we're going to really focus on learning for diverse needs and varying perspectives. So I need someone to come off mute and say, Nikki, let's go.
Nikki, let's go.
I love it. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so before I start every single class session, whether it's face-to-face or virtual, I have to ensure that my students understand that I am human, because they oftentimes think that I'm an alien, I'm disconnected in the world. And so I want them to understand the importance of being relatable. And so if you know me, which most of you may not, but you will, I am a huge Beyonce fan. So anytime the students talk about Beyonce in a class, I literally close the textbook and I say, let's dig deep into the Renaissance. And so what we're do before we get started, I want someone other than Dr. Flores to come off of mute and cast your vote for the best all-around entertainer and performer and tell us why. Don't be shy. Beyonce or Taylor? Best performer. Anyone? Okay, well, Dr. Flores, it looks like they're going to put you on the spot.
That's okay, Dr. Caesar, I'll go.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
So Dr. Caesar, I will tell you that, and I don't know about the group we have here this morning, but I am a fan of neither of these very powerful, talented young women. I prefer a very different kind of music, and I could not vote for either. I think they're probably equal in my opinion because I don't listen to them. I could not tell you one song either of these ladies sing.
Ah, thank you, Dr. Jody, for your perspective.
I apologize that I couldn't pick one more than the other.
No, please do not apologize because your perspective is spot on. And oftentimes in conversations as it relates to the classroom, there are going to be some learners who may not have an option, who may not have a suggestion. But I definitely appreciate that feedback and your candor. And that's going to come very important as we talk a little bit more about respecting the opinions of others. So thank you for that perspective. I did hear someone else trying to chime in. Does anyone want to cast their vote for either or neither?
Yes, I'll cast my vote a little bit, and I listened to both of them, and I think it depends on the times you're talking about. So if you were to go back to about 5 years ago, I probably would have said Beyonce was better, but given the recent concerts and the followers that Taylor Swift has, at this time, I'll currently give it to Taylor Swift.
Oh, Taylor Swift. I thank you for that. Thank you for that. And so just to wrap this up, the reason why I did that is I want you all to consider showing signs of relatability. So letting your students know before you open up the session, right, to offer a warm class environment. Hey, let's talk a little bit about ways in which, you know, others may not see different things the way that you see them, but really taking an opportunity to encourage those to have their opinions. And so, again, allowing learners to see the human side of us right from the beginning of the semester. So kudos to those that engaged. Thank you so very much for entertaining me. And of course, you all know that my vote would be the one and only Beyonce. So today's goals, by the end of this session, you will be able to start defining inclusive learning by, we're going to have a lot of fun doing this, unpacking the I in Capri. We're also going to identify 5 steps, not too many, just quick 5 steps to an inclusive learning environment. So are you guys ready? Someone say, let's go.
Let's go.
I love it. Awesome. All right. So what I would like to do at this point is I want you to raise your hand, use the hand raising if you have ever considered or been a part of the following. And I'm going to read this very slow. So I want you to pause and I want you to look to see who all has their hand raised after I read each of the statements. Okay. All right, here we go. Raise your hand if you have ever been picked on or called an unkind name. Raise your hand if you've ever been picked on or called an unkind name. So as you're raising your hand, I want you to look in the chat, look at others that are raising their hand. Okay, go ahead and lower your hand. Raise your hand if you have ever been left out. Raise your hand if you've ever been left out. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever been left out because of your gender. Raise your hand if you've ever been left out because of your gender. Raise your hand if someone you care about has been picked on because of the color of their skin during your university college experience. Raise your hand if you care about, and raise your hand if someone you know has been picked on because of the color of their skin during the university or college experience, okay? Raise your hand if you or someone you know has a disability. Okay, and last, raise your hand if you have ever felt alone or unwelcome in a classroom. Okay. All right. So I know some of the statements that I read really touched home for a lot of your colleagues and a lot of us. So what I want us to do is I want us to reflect on the questions that I raised. And so I want you to put in the chat. Actually, if we can, Dr. Flores, I would like to break the group out. And I want us to reflect on a couple of questions. I want us to think about, what did you learn about your colleagues? There were some colleagues that raised their hands because they've been picked on or called an unkind name, or because of their gender. I also want you to consider, what did you learn about yourself? As you heard me read those statements, what type of feelings came to mind? And then last, what can you take away from this activity that would support the achievement of the I, inclusive learning, in CAP3? And so we're going to take a moment, we're going to break out into small groups, and I'm going to ask that Dr. Flores help me with doing so. We're going to come back in about 2 minutes.
Okay, everyone, the breakout rooms are now open. If you did not receive a notice on your screen telling you to go to a breakout room, it means that you are in the main room, which is right here. So don't go away. It would mean we'd love to hear from you and keep that conversation going in this main room.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So as you reflect on some of the questions that I read, I'll go ahead and ask the first question. What did you learn about your colleagues or yourself during this exercise?
So, Dr. Caesar, I think that when we have the opportunity to reflect on the different experiences that we've had where we have not felt included, or we have felt that because we are different, we are treated differently. We are not alone um, in that feeling. As you had each person raise their hand and share, I think what we saw was there were commonalities around the questions that you asked. And so that we can, it may not have been the exact same kind of experience, but we certainly have all experienced, or at least many people who raise their hands have experienced something that connected them to that question.
Thank you, Dr. Jody, for your feedback. Yeah, that's great. Anyone else would like to contribute?
Dr. Caesar, I learned a little bit about myself as I realized how terrible I felt to know that my colleagues had experiences such as the ones that you had mentioned. And I learned about myself how much I care for my colleagues, because my heart was breaking as I saw the hands being raised. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, that's awful, you know,
Mhm.
especially for some of those situations, even more so than the others. But you know, I always knew that I care about my colleagues, but this kind of really solidified that. So
Yeah. Thank you for providing those perspectives. You know, what's interesting, and I'll share a little bit about what Dr. Jody just mentioned, is that oftentimes our students come into our classrooms with these same norms, with these same feelings. And so as practitioners, as scholars, we are to embrace those opportunities to get them to engage and to express how they truly feel about different topics of discussions that may arise in the classroom. So I appreciate those perspectives. Anyone else? And so as we think about our feelings and the feelings of our colleagues, what can you take away from this activity that would support the achievement of the I in CAPRI?
I think one of the most important things that this exercise underscores is the idea of inclusiveness and equity needs to be intersectional and transformational. That just because is going through doesn't mean that they're not going through something, and that there are multiple areas where people's identities and lived experiences intersect, and we should be
Jennifer, you cut off, but you are spot on. Thank you. Thank you for that. And as we close, go ahead and get back into the main session. I love the fact that you mentioned that this is transactional, and oftentimes we have to learn how to become transformational and not ignore those expressions or those feelings and those thoughts as we're engaging with students, but allowing them an opportunity to dive deep into that so that we can be able to be a support for them as they are matriculating through our class and or through their degree. And so thank you so much for your engagement. Dr. Flores, I'm going to ask if you would be so kind and bring everyone back into the main session.
Dr. Caesar, it looks like everyone is now back in the main session.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. So if I can get one person to come off of mute and share a little bit about the conversation and some things that they discovered around their colleagues and or themselves during this exercise. I can't give any bonus points, but all right. I see Jordan has raised their hand. Please go ahead and share.
Yes, and we were trying to get the question, so I'm just going to quickly share a few points. I think we learned that we want to find commonality amongst folks. We also know that if we kind of look at ourselves, kind of through the lens of being, a way to relate and listen to people and be intentional about what we're listening from them and how we're sharing about ourselves, building those bridges. And the takeaway is we all kind of want to be seen and heard.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Thank you for that. You know, it's interesting that you talked about being intentional. Jennifer was in my group, and I hope it's okay to pick on you just a little bit, but she brought up the word transformational, transactional, actually. And so oftentimes our feelings become transactional. And so, for example, I may share, unfortunately, I don't have a pencil in class. Can I borrow a pencil? And then the teacher gives them a pencil and then they just continue to carry on, as opposed to really stopping and thinking, let's have a conversation after class to really figure out what's going on. Is it because you're not prepared, or is it because you don't have the tools truly to be successful at home to bring to the classroom? And it's really about being transformational and respectful, and to your point, intentional about the learning and making our classroom into a culture where people feel heard. So I appreciate, give yourselves a hand. Thank you so much for engaging in this activity. So we are going to move on as we really unpacked the I in CAPRI, right? And so many of you in your discussion groups have already talked a little bit about what essentially does this mean? And so we are really learning for diverse needs in varying perspectives. And so essentially that is what the definition is. And then ultimately, it all becomes inclusive in the classroom. And so if you identify and recognize that in your learning environment, students come in from a various needs, right? Whether it is that someone told them that they had to come to class or enroll in the class, or they're doing this because they truly want to be successful in life, or because they don't have any other choice. They may be a single parent, or they may have an opportunity where this is only going to be able to yield positive results in their life. And so different needs are coming into your classroom, varying perspectives. You have students that range from all different ages and backgrounds, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about how do we support and recognize that students have different perspectives once they encounter your learning and you in the classroom. And then ultimately talking a little bit about diversity and how that marries into inclusivity in the classroom. And so I want to share just a really quick story, if I can. Pre-COVID, I didn't necessarily consider the importance of inclusion. Is it okay to keep it real and honest with you all? Someone say, keep it real, Nikki.
Keep it real, Nikki.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And unfortunately, I'm super embarrassed by saying this, but I didn't really consider the importance of conclusion in the classroom until I met Miss Johnny and Rose. So I used to get emotional just thinking about it, but both students were enrolled in my business principles class, but for different reasons. And it wasn't until I asked each of the students to stand and give a brief introduction about themselves, like I usually do. And typically, I'll ask them to tell me a reason why you're taking the course. And oftentimes it's because I was told I have to graduate. I also ask them their program of study and then share a little bit about their family, school appropriate. And then I'll do the same thing for my online courses as well. And so this becomes a discussion post, an introduction. And this is an opportunity for me to really learn the students that I have in the classroom. And it also allows me to tailor the discussions and or the content to ensure that everyone has a voice in the classroom. But so Miss Johnny is 82. Well, she was 82 at the time. She has a bachelor's in engineering. She retired from Texas Instruments, and she was raised in the southern sector of Dallas. And so if you know anything about Texas, there is a clear divide between the South and the North. Now, Miss Johnny was late for class every single day. But then we had Miss Rose. Now, Rose was 16 years old. She was a dual credit student. She was SGA president, no professional work experience, and she stayed on the north side of Dallas. And every time Rose walked into class, Rose had her cup of Starbucks in hand, but she was always on time. And so what was interesting about the two is what I'm trying to do is paint a picture of the different spectrum that I had in the class, diversity in the classroom. But what you want to realize is that Rose was a engineer by trade, and Miss Johnny was, and Rose wanted to be an engineer. And so what I realized once I was able to make that connection at the very beginning, the first day of the semester, I knew that I was going to have to pull Miss Johnny into more conversations because of her wisdom, because of her level of acumen. And initially it was rather tough. But once I was able to bring Miss Johnny into conversations that she will be able to contribute to, I noticed that Rose began to have an interest. She was a little timid at first by engaging with Miss Johnny, because obviously she thinks that nothing was in common. But I would like to report that over the course of the 16 weeks, Miss Johnny was able to help Rose with getting an internship with Texas Instruments. And to this day, they are still connected. and Miss Johnny is actually 87 years old, and Rose is working at Texas Instrument. And so it's really about figuring out how to engage students with various backgrounds to not only make connections, not only to improve their lifelong learning skills, but also to be able to make connections with others. But it took me as the practitioner in the classroom to be able to recognize the varying perspectives and to be able to bring it out from the students so that they can be able to contribute to their learning. So thank you so much for allowing me to share that little story. That really, really goes a long way with me. And I try to share that with everyone that I come in contact with. So my charge to you is to find that connection, those connections in your classroom with your students so that they can be able to truly make an impact, not only in their lives, but in the lives of others. And so as I mentioned about recognizing the different perspectives in your classroom and in any day, right? And as you encounter anyone, this is really through the dimensions of race, ethnicity, culture, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, political age, and religious beliefs. And so recognizing the different perspectives, I'm like, the best way to put it is like gumbo. I'm from Louisiana originally, and I love gumbo. And inside gumbo, there are your crabs, your shrimp, your chicken, your sausage, and it just won't come out the same, right? If you don't have all those ingredients. And so that's really how your classroom works, where you really want to be able to put all of those different perspectives into your classroom to really be able to have a strong cultural learning environment. All right. So we've already talked a little bit about diversity and inclusion, but I do want to hear from you. I want to hear from some of you as it relates to how do you embrace diversity and inclusion in your classroom. So we're going to pause. Feel free to use the chat or come off of mute and share what you do to embrace a diversified and inclusive learning environment in your classroom.
I think what I try. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to recognize you, my friend. Thank you.
What I try to do is, I know a lot of times when we look at issues and challenges within society, we look at them through a traditional lens, right? Maybe certain civil rights points, but I also try to tie it to current day and different things that are going on so that students can look at it on a broad level and relate to it and understand it and begin to process it. It requires students to be able to move from looking at themselves as a center or through their lens or their quality world, but looking through the lens of others and their experiences and how they can relate or not connect or build maybe ways that they push people away from them by not being able to hear what someone is saying or what they're going through, but how to stand in those shoes and, go through those experiences where people really face some things and see how maybe what you feel like or what they may be going through and try to understand. And I think when we shape a lot of different, activities or exercises around that, people can get a sense of that. And you can use like YouTube stories, you can use experiences that people go through. There's a variety of ways to bring people in to understand the humanity of it.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Thank you for sharing. I mean, you really raised a lot of good points around bringing in your experiences and sharing stories. I found that goes a long way. And one of the things that I really had to do just recently is close the textbook, especially if students are at a point where they're typically an introvert and they're really starting to show and share and become open around their experiences as it aligns to the learning. I've really found myself closing the textbook and really just having those deep conversations around the material from a high level standpoint, right? And so I appreciate you being able to say how you shape your class learning by utilizing YouTube and stories and experience to really captivate that conversation. Anyone else? All right. Well, if you have any other thoughts around how you embrace and support diversity and inclusion, please feel free to use your chat. We'll definitely be able to recognize you and acknowledge those different ways because we are all trying to learn how to do better. So as we move on, I used the analogy gumbo earlier, but as we are preparing for Thanksgiving and spending time with our family, I really wanted to hone in around diversity in ways that you can really look at diversity. And so here, you have a variety of different objects or ingredients rather to make something really sweet and really nice. And so let's take diversity and consider that to be the mixed, right? So you have all of your ingredients right here to make the mix. And then essentially the inclusion is making the mix work, right? So the cocoa that you saw, the oil, the eggs. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want a cupcake without the sugar or the vanilla. And so looking at that as representation of your the perspectives of the students, but then also the perspectives of you and these social norms that we've learned or that we've adopted over the course of our existence, and bringing that into the classroom to ultimately define and shape the culture of learning around inclusivity. So this is an awesome analogy, and I hope you all are able to understand and really adopt of the practices around making the mix work. And that's really all about allowing your students to be heard and recognized to share their viewpoints. All right. So diverse needs, and so I won't read this to you, but I just want you to understand that a range of average needs of students resulting from due to their socioeconomic, physical, emotional, intellectual characteristics. And so as you're reflecting on the diverse needs of your students, I want you to consider what learners need to do, or what learners need to do as you think about how we can implement inclusive practices at WU, right? So how can we, as practitioners, educators, introduce or implement inclusive practices at WU? Anyone want to come off mute and share?
Dr. Caesar, we have a great comment in the chat from Dr. Lipo. It's all about finding a common denominator that applies to all students, but also finding something that everyone can relate to in at least a small way. Then everyone can come along for the journey. I thought that was pretty great comment.
Absolutely. Excellent. And such a profound statement. Thank you so much for sharing. And that's really essentially what it's truly all about. Truly all about. Awesome. Thank you so much for engaging. And so as we are wrapping up, I want us to be mindful of inclusive faculty acknowledge the following, right? So we acknowledge the abilities of our students. Students learn from different ways, different perspectives, different ideas. They're able to bring in value add to conversations in a different way. The beliefs, we recognize that students believe in different things. And so I mentioned earlier, some students believe that we're aliens and we're coming from a different planet and we just don't get them. And so although they recognize that in us, we have some beliefs about them as well. But I won't go into those, but we want to recognize that inclusive faculty, we really want to acknowledge those beliefs, background, the sexual orientation of all of our students, and then last but not least, the economic status of our students. And so once you're able to acknowledge all of these different variables, you're really able to identify or create a culture of learning in your classroom. Okay. So we are going to have just one final group discussion. It may not be 10 minutes or so, Dr. Flores, but in which diversity areas do you think our university actively promotes an inclusive learning environment? And so within your groups, I want you to share your thoughts and provide 2 examples in which our university actively promotes an inclusive learning environment. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Flores if she would be so kind and break us up into groups.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Okay, everyone, on your screen, you should see your breakout room button. Just click that little button and we'll see you soon. If you did not receive a little button on your screen, it just means you're in the main room here with Dr. Caesar. And at this time, all breakout rooms are open, Dr. Caesar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Flores. And so I will recap the question and I'm going to hear from you all this time. So again, in which diversity areas do you think our university actively promotes an inclusive learning environment? I'll go ahead and just start here. One of the ways or areas in which I think the university actively promotes an inclusive learning environment is I really appreciate the demographics in the classroom. I appreciate that students come from all different various ages. Your students can be 18 and one can be 80 like Miss Johnny was, right? And so I can appreciate that aspect of age. And then I also appreciate the background as it relates to our faculty and staff, our very diverse background that really marries and mirrors rather our student population. And so I appreciate what Westcliff does to promote diversity, not only from a student perspective, but from a faculty and staff employee perspective. So any other thoughts?
Just from a general perspective, what we have done to encourage our staff and our faculty to help promote inclusive learning environments is just really living by some of our core values that are focused on inclusivity. So, say, for example, our diversity, equity, and inclusion focus in our core values has a committee of its own. And I think that's just the coolest thing because you have different voices, different perspectives. They are faculty, they are admin, they are staff. They come together and they talk about ways to promote that mindset or that understanding. That's one of the things I see at Westcliff University that I see at very few institutions. So just living by not just our mission, but our core values and helping others understand that there are better ways to do what we do and to help bring all student voices, all faculty voices, all staff voices into the fold.
Thank you, Dr. Flores, for providing that information. It's really, truly awesome to see that Westcliff does live by the core values and they recognize when others are doing the same, because unfortunately that doesn't happen everywhere. So we are truly grateful that we have an opportunity in our institution to have our voices heard, particularly around the DEI committee, so that people are able to bring different perspectives on for us to be able to be a rich institution. Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, thank you. Let's go ahead, Dr. Flores, and bring everyone back to the main room.
Okay, Dr. Caesar, at this time, all participants are back in the main room.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. All right, guys. So this was our last breakout session. I cannot wait to hear your feedback. Who wants to share what Westcliff University currently does to promote an inclusive learning environment? I don't know about your groups, but our group had a great discussion. Oh, I hear someone speaking. Go ahead.
Hello. I was just going to say our school itself, with us being, international educators, I would say, in my opinion, that the majority of our students, if not, the majority, are all international. They're coming from all different backgrounds and cultures. And I think what we do best, in my opinion, is that, we acknowledge, our mission, our contribution to educating our students, no matter where they are. I think what we do best is, number one is opportunities like this, where all faculty are here learning and sharing the knowledge of what diversity is and acknowledgement. So I think that one of the things that we do best is making sure that the people that lead the education and the shared knowledge for our students are here in this meeting, taking in this new knowledge, being able to then go into their class that they may teach tonight or one of these days, and being able to utilize this information and push it to our class. I think that having that open communication is a huge attribute of what we do, as far as what we do as far as learning from each other at this level. But I also think the collaboration and the teamwork that we have and the work that we do for a lot of the assignments that we have that push for team collaboration. Students who may live in the same country, have different cultures, are now brought into a class together, and they're able to say, "Oh, okay, wow, this is how this person thinks. This is how this person thinks. This is So all of those types of elements. I think all of our policies and practices, in my opinion, kind of spearhead, how we as educators in the international academic community puts us in a different respect to education. And I also teach at another school as well that's also international. And I can say from the two, we have a little bit more going for ourselves in that regard. So I won't take up any more time, but that was my thoughts.
That is fantastic, Professor McCoy. Thank you for mentioning those key aspects. What's interesting about what you said is that those elements are truly preparing our students for the workforce. Being able to recognize that most of our students are international, right? And so they bring in different perspectives around their culture. We're really getting them prepared for the workforce to enter into real life experience. And so they'll be able to recognize those similar conversations that are had in the classroom in their workplace. And so thank you so much for bringing that up. I do see a hand raised from Omar. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Westcliff University has amazing learning environment. I am with Westcliff University for 9 years, and my experience with this environment, it's amazing, because I didn't saw that there is any diversity between the people. Doesn't matter who are you and how you are thinking. All the people communicate very peaceful. The people communicate in Westcliff University in a very relaxed environment. Doesn't matter who are you and how you are thinking. What do you think? What's in your mind? It is amazing. It is magic in the Westcliff University, because there's a lot of people, different people with different background, educational background, cultural background, different religions, but all the people are dealing with each other in the equal opportunity. That's why you feel relaxed in this learning environment in Westcliff University. It is sound. It's counted for Westcliff University in this time, where in the different places, different areas, there is a very different situations, but Westcliff University keep the environment very relaxed, amazing, and for all, it's peaceful environment. Thank you.
Omar, I don't know about you all. Between Omar and Professor McCoy, I am proud to be able to say that I work at Westcliff. I heard you mention respect. It doesn't matter what race you are, where you're from, you're heard and you are valued. I heard collaboration from the two of you. I've also heard equal opportunity. There's so much going on in different higher learning institutions, but for us to be able to have a conversation around what we are doing well just really signifies and solidify that we are exactly where we are supposed to be. And so when we are happy and we're believing in the value and the mission of the institution, we're really able to make a change and impact our students along the way. So thank you so much for engaging in those conversations with me. Please, if you have some other thoughts around what Westcliff University is doing, please feel free to put those in the chat as well. And I hate to put Dr. Flores on the spot, but she also talked a little bit in our group about the core values and how the university really focuses on ensuring that people are living out our core values. And so I appreciate that they are walking the walk and talking the talk. And then also to being able to put people in groups where people are able to be heard and changes are able to be made with the common good of thinking about students first. So thank you once again. So I'm going to move right along because we are coming close to running out of time. So just to recap, you guys have been so amazing. I hope that we are able to really understand just some simple steps, 5 quick steps on how to ensure that we are providing an inclusive learning environment. And so really briefly, as you're thinking about engaging with your international students or engaging with all of your students and colleagues, learning from different diverse needs and varying perspectives is key. Right? Recognizing that everyone may not think the way that we think or do or walk or talk the way that we talk, but we want to be able to understand and embrace the difference in everyone. Another key takeaway is building relationships with your students. I opened up this session with Beyonce versus Taylor because most of my students, that is their world. They know either one of them. Hopefully they like Beyonce more than they like Taylor. But I mean, hey, I appreciate the various perspectives. Like Dr. Jody mentioned, she doesn't care about either one of them. But that was her perspective. And so building a relationship with our students is key and important. It also helps with retention as well. Encouraging students to help shape your learning. And so we want students to help teach us so that we are able to connect with them so that they're able to feel safe. They're able to be transparent with us. So we want to encourage students to help us learn this new technology, maybe around AI, and maybe that's a different conversation for a different topic, but how do we appreciate the learning that AI brings to the classroom and having our students bring some perspectives around that. Number 4, embracing the diversity in your classroom. We talked a lot really about our diverse class and how we can embrace that and incorporate that into our curriculum. Number 5, encourage engagement and reflection. I talked a lot about Miss Johnny and Rose and their experience in my class, and that is truly a testimony, and that ideally is what we want to do. We want to foster these lasting relationships amongst our students, as well as our faculty and staff. And then last, it says 5 steps, but I added a 6th step for bonus. Be authentic and approachable. We are all scholars in our own way. We are all practitioners, and we know a lot about the acumen that we teach and the content that we teach. But we also have to be mindful to be approachable and to be really authentic as we shape the learning of others in our classroom. And so, excuse me, but I wanted to add that 6th step instead of 5. So I've added 1 extra for you. And so as we close, I have some home fun, not homework, but home fun. So I want you to think about how you would apply the definition of inclusive learning, teaching in Capri in your current position. And then also want you to try one of the 6 steps discussed in the presentation. Okay, so we are approaching 10:50. So I would like for you all to share your thoughts. I'm going to send a link in the chat, or if Dr. Flores can do that, that would be great, where you all can provide your feedback on today's session. And I will the presentation back to Dr. Flores to talk about some important upcoming events and sessions.